There are shadows that cling to power, secrets woven into the fabric of authority. Sometimes, the most chilling mysteries aren't about who committed the crime, but about who is allowed to escape its consequences. Tonight, we delve into the dark heart of the state where the law itself becomes a weapon, and a man born to privilege seems untouchable, no matter the blood on his hands. This is the story of the Altair Compliment. Part 1. The Echoes in the Asphalt. The city of Havenwood carried its scars like a permanent shroud. Months after the week of the crackdown, the scent of tear gas had faded, but the memory lingered in the dust motes that danced in the weak sunlight filtering through broken windows. Graffiti demanding justice was scrubbed away by city crews, but the anger it represented remained, a low hum beneath the surface of forced calm. The official narrative, repeated endlessly by state media and Governor Silas Blackwood Sr. S. Press Secretary, painted a picture of a necessary, albeit tragic, restoration of order against violent, anarchic elements. They spoke of overturned cars, vandalized businesses, and brave state forces protecting citizens from chaos. The 32 documented deaths were framed as unfortunate incidents in a volatile situation, isolated tragedies, never systemic failures or intentional acts. But the families of the dead and missing knew better. They told stories of peaceful protests met with disproportionate force, of rubber bullets fired at close range, of beatings in the streets, of people dragged into unmarked vans never to be seen again by their loved ones. Whispers, persistent and chilling, linked the brutality directly to the governor's mansion, and specifically to his son, Silas Blackwood Jr. The younger Blackwood, often referred to as the state's shadow premier, held a position created seemingly for him, granting access and authority far beyond its official description. He was the face of the state's security apparatus during those dark days, seen on limited news footage addressing commanders, his expression cold and devoid of empathy. He was the heir apparent, the scion of a political dynasty that had ruled Altair for generations, and the city felt his weight, heavy and suffocating. As national headlines screamed for investigations and accountability, Governor Blackwood Sr. appeared on television, his jowls shaking with feigned indignation at the accusations. He spoke of state pride, of the fundamental right of Altair to manage its own affairs. Flanking him, looking suitably grave, was Attorney General Thorne. It was Thorne who announced the state's formal decision to handle all investigations and potential prosecutions related to the crackdown internally. The state of Altair possesses the full legal framework, the necessary resources, and the unwavering commitment to pursue justice for all its citizens within our own borders, Thorne declared, his voice resonating with carefully calibrated authority. Any incidents of misconduct by state personnel will be thoroughly investigated and prosecuted right here, under Altair law. There is no need for external interference. It was a carefully worded statement, a legal maneuver wrapped in patriotic rhetoric. To anyone paying close attention, it wasn't just an assertion of states' rights. It was a declaration of protection. Silas Blackwood Jr. remained free, moving through the state's opulent circles, a ghost in the machine of justice. His presence a constant, galling reminder of what had happened and the blatant effort to ensure he would never truly answer for it. Part 2. The Stain on the Docket. Eleanor Vance sat in her small, perpetually cluttered office, the glow of her laptop illuminating stacks of paper. She had left the state prosecutor's office 3 years ago, tired of the political compromises the cases that were subtly steered towards dead ends when they brushed too close to certain names. She had seen how justice in Altair often wore a price tag or bent to political will. The Havenwood crackdown had brought all that cynicism roaring back. Thorne's press conference, with its smooth dismissal of external oversight under the guise of state sovereignty, had been the breaking point. It was the Altair complement in action, the state claiming competence not to deliver justice, but to hoard the jurisdiction to prevent anyone else from looking too closely, especially its Silas Blackwood Jr. She pulled up the limited public filings on the crackdown. A handful of state troopers charged with excessive force, resulting in probation or short suspensions. A captain disciplined for failure to maintain order. No mention of command structure, no inquiry into who gave the orders, no acknowledgement of the coordinated tactics that eyewitnesses described. The cases were designed to be contained, isolated incidents, presented as proof that the state was taking action, thus fulfilling the requirement of being willing and able to prosecute, legally blocking outside intervention. Her first call was to Mark Jennings, a veteran investigative journalist at a struggling local paper who had tried and failed to report on the deeper issues behind the crackdown. "Eleanor, haven't heard from you in ages. What can I do for you?" Mark's voice was weary, underscored by years of chasing stories the powerful didn't want told. "Mark, it's about Havenwood and Silas Jr." A pause stretched on the line. Yeah. Went dark on that for a reason, Eleanor. Got lean on pretty hard. Threats. Nothing overt, just enough to make you rethink your life choices. I know. I saw Thorne's little show. The state claiming jurisdiction to cover their tracks. It's blatant. Blatant, ineffective, Mark sighed. They've tied it up in state courts. Any federal move gets challenged on complementarity grounds. We're handling it. See? Our courts are laws. And our courts? Stacked with Blackwood appointments. It's a perfect loop. But are they genuinely able and willing? Eleanor pressed. That's the loophole. You need proof, Eleanor. Hard proof. Not just the smell of corruption, which is thick enough to choke on down here. You need something undeniable linking Silas Jr. directly to the orders for the crackdown, and proof that the state is actively burying it, not just being conveniently incompetent. I know, Eleanor said, her voice firm. That's why I'm calling. I'm looking into it. Officially. Private investigator now, huh? Mark chuckled, a dry, humorless sound. Ballsy. Okay, look, I kept some of my notes off the grid. Contacts who spoke off the record before they got scared quiet. Anecdotal stuff, mostly, but maybe a starting point. Careful, Eleanor. They play rough. Oh, be careful. Can you send me what you have? Break time equals 0. 7S / sending now. And Eleanor, be damn careful. Hanging up, Eleanor felt a surge of adrenaline mixed with dread. Mark was right. This wasn't just a cold case or a standard investigation. She was poking a hornet's nest, and the queen bee wore a governor's smile, while her son lurked in the shadows, seemingly untouchable. Part 3. Through a maze of influence. Eleanor immersed herself in the digital detritus of the crackdown. Social media posts from that week, filtered and archived before they were scrubbed from public view. Local news reports, carefully comparing initial broadcasts to later, more sanitized versions. Legal filings from civil suits brought by victims' families, stonewalled and buried in procedural delays. She built timelines, mapping the movements of state security units against the peak times of violence. She traveled to Havenwood, posing as a researcher for a fictional historical project. She walked the streets where the worst clashes occurred, the air still thick with a heavy, mournful silence. She spoke to residents, their initial suspicion giving way to cautious whispers once they understood she wasn't official. An elderly woman, whose storefront had been destroyed, spoke of seeing men in unmarked uniforms alongside state troopers, carrying weapons she didn't recognize. A young man showed her photos on his phone, taken in the chaos, showing faces he recognized from the governor's security detail, but also unfamiliar faces, hard eyes, under tactical gear with no state insignia. Eleanor's office became a war room. Maps of Altair covered one wall, marked with pins indicating incident locations and known Blackwood properties. The other wall was a spiderweb of connections, names of state officials, judges, police chiefs, linked by lines to Blackwood family members, campaign donations, and shared business interests. The pattern was clear, a tightly controlled network, loyal to the dynasty. She delved deeper into the financial records Mark had alluded to. It was like trying to trace smoke. Money flowed through layers of LLCs, holding companies registered in states known for corporate secrecy, eventually landing in accounts with generic names. It took days of painstaking work, cross-referencing limited public databases with leaked corporate registries from offshore havens, before she found a recurring name on transfer receipts. Altair Future Initiative. It was a registered nonprofit, ostensibly dedicated to state development and community betterment, but it was chaired by Silas Blackwood Jr., and its funding sources were opaque. As she got closer, the pressure increased. Her email account was hit with sophisticated phishing attempts. Her phone developed strange echoes and dropped calls. A manila envelope arrived at her office with no return address, containing a single, chilling photograph. A picture of her front door, taken recently. It wasn't a direct threat, but the message was clear: "We see you." One evening, she received a call from block number. Eleanor Vance, a voice gravelly and distorted, asked, "Who is this?" "Someone who knows you should drop it. The Havenwood thing. It's done. The state's handling it. Walk away." "Is that a threat?" "Break time equals 0. 7S / a low chuckle. "Considerate advice. Some things are best left buried. For your own health." The line went dead. She knew then she was on the right track. The harder they tried to scare her off, the closer she was getting to something they desperately wanted to hide. The Altair Future Initiative, the hidden money, the non-official personnel. It all pointed to a level of premeditation and control that the state's narrative of chaotic crowd control simply couldn't accommodate. The maze was complex, and the architect was Silas Blackwood Jr. Part 4. The Turning Point. The breakthrough came late one rainy Tuesday night. Eleanor was staring at the financial flow chart for the Altair Future Initiative, frustrated by the dead ends, when her secure messaging app pinged. A message from an anonymous contact, someone recommended by Mark Jennings as potentially having peripheral knowledge. The contact had a name: Kevin Fisher. A former logistics manager for a private security firm called Sentinel Solutions, recently dissolved. They arranged a meeting at a neutral location, a diner 20 miles outside the city. Kevin was jumpy, his eyes darting around the room. He ordered coffee, but didn't touch it. "You're asking about Havenwood," Kevin began, his voice low, "and about Silas Blackwood Jr. and the Altair Future Initiative." "Yes," Eleanor confirmed, her heart pounding. "Look, I wasn't on the ground," Kevin said, rubbing his hands together. I did the paperwork, the supply manifest, the payroll. Sentinel Solutions. We got a fat contract from the initiative months before anything kicked off in Havenwood. Paid obscenely well. What was the contract for? Kevin hesitated, looking out the rain-streaked window. Officially? Consulting services and asset relocation. Unofficially? We provided personnel, not just guards, trained operators, ex-military. The kind of guys who follow orders, no questions asked. And where did they go? They were embedded, Kevin confirmed, his voice barely a whisper, attached to state police units, but answering to a separate chain of command. Handlers linked directly to the initiative's logistics coordinator. We set up supply drops, secure comms. Everything ran parallel to the official state channels. And who was giving the orders to that chain of command? Eleanor pressed, leaning forward. Kevin finally met her eyes, the fear in them palpable. Silas Jr., it all came from the initiative. The targets, the tactics, the dispersal zones. It wasn't the state police planning that. It was planned months in advance. The protests were just the trigger they were waiting for. He slid a worn USB drive across the table. These are backups. Communication logs the company tried to delete. Encrypted, but you look like you know your stuff. Payroll records showing who was paid and by whom. Eleanor picked up the drive, her fingers trembling slightly. Liability clauses? Yeah. They paid extra for client insulation. Means if our guys got caught doing something messy, Sentinel Solutions took the fall. Blackwood Jr. stayed clean on paper. It was all designed to keep him disconnected, untouchable. Kevin pushed back from the table. That's all I got. I gotta go. This is dangerous, you know? They dissolve Sentinel, but the people involved, they don't like loose ends. Thank you, Kevin. You did the right thing. He nodded, a haunted look in his eyes, and quickly left the diner. Back in her office, Eleanor plugged in the drive. Hours later, after running decryption software, the files opened. The logs were chilling. Coded messages detailing troop movements, specific addresses targeted, directives to use maximum discouragement. The contract itself was a masterpiece of legal obfuscation, detailing services that amounted to state-sanctioned, privately funded violence, all while insulating the client, the Altair Future Initiative, chaired by Silas Blackwood Jr., from any responsibility. This wasn't just corruption. This was a meticulously planned operation, outsourced and paid for by a powerful figure using a shell nonprofit, then shielded by a state government claiming jurisdiction. The state's investigation wasn't incompetent. It was a deliberate cover-up, an intricate dance of legal maneuvering designed to provide the Altair complement, ensuring that the man truly responsible could never be reached by genuine justice. The evidence was overwhelming, undeniable proof that the state was unwilling to prosecute the actual architect of the crackdown. This was the turning point. The truth was exposed, raw and sickening. Part 5. The Aftermath and Lingering Shadows. Eleanor sent the decrypted files and her detailed analysis to the national news outlet. The subsequent article, published simultaneously online and in print, exploded like a bomb in the quiet world of Altair politics. Headlines screamed about a shadow army, Blackwood's private war, and the state's complicity. The narrative of isolated incidents shattered under the weight of documented, premeditated action funded by Silas Blackwood Jr.'s foundation. Federal investigators, armed with this new, irrefutable evidence of interstate financial transactions and coordinated, privately funded violence, moved swiftly. Federal warrants were issued for Silas Blackwood Jr.'s arrest on charges including conspiracy to violate civil rights and illegal use of paramilitary forces. Several key figures within the state security apparatus who had collaborated with Sentinel Solutions were also indicted. The fallout was immediate and dramatic. Attorney General Thorne, his face pale and drawn, held a brief, evasive press conference before announcing his immediate retirement. Other state officials implicated in facilitating the cover-up quietly disappeared from public life or issued weak denials. Governor Blackwood Sr.'s approval ratings plummeted, and calls for his resignation grew louder, though he defiantly refused to step down, blaming the scandal on rogue elements and political opportunists. But the central figure, Silas Blackwood Jr., remained free. His legal team, led by a high-priced former federal prosecutor now in private practice, immediately challenged the federal jurisdiction. They argued, ironically, that since the alleged crimes occurred within Altair, the state retained primary jurisdiction, and any federal intervention was premature and overreaching, citing the very Altair compliment that Thorne had initially invoked to shield him. The case became a complex legal and political battleground, a test of whether a powerful individual could use the structure of federalism and claims of state sovereignty to evade justice for even the most heinous acts. Eleanor watched it unfold with a weary sense of vindication and profound frustration. She had exposed the truth. She had provided the evidence that shattered the state's carefully constructed facade. But seeing Silas Blackwood Jr. still moving freely within the state, his legal team successfully tying the case up in jurisdictional challenges that could take years to resolve, was a bitter pill to swallow. Mark Jennings called her. "You did it, Eleanor. You blew the lid off." "Yeah," she replied, her voice flat. "And he's still walking around." The wheels of justice turn slowly, especially when they're greased with Blackwood money, Mark said with a sigh. But his name is mud. The truth is out. Is it enough? Eleanor wondered aloud. The families, they still don't have justice. He's not in custody. The system he manipulated is still protecting him, just in a different courtroom now. Months turned into a year. The federal case against Silas Blackwood Jr. remained tied up in preliminary hearings, appeals on jurisdictional challenges, and endless procedural delays orchestrated by his defense. He lived openly at the Blackwood family compound, occasionally photographed attending private events, a ghost in the machine of federal justice, just as he had been in the state system. Sentinel Solutions was gone, its assets dispersed, its personnel scattered to the wind, untraceable. The money trail, exposed for a moment, was quickly reburied under new layers of corporate secrecy. The lingering shadow wasn't just Silas Blackwood Jr.'s freedom. It was the unsettling confirmation that for certain people, power and wealth provided a shield against consequences, a legal force field that could deflect even the most damning evidence. The Altair compliment had evolved from a state cover-up into a protracted legal battle, but the outcome felt depressingly similar. The architect of violence remained untouched. The quiet fear in Havenwood never fully dissipated, a low hum of injustice beneath the surface, a chilling reminder that sometimes the most dangerous places were not outside the law, but deep within its complicated, exploitable structure. The case was ongoing, the legal fight continued, but the cold, hard truth was that Silas Blackwood Jr. had not, and might never, truly face justice. His freedom was the final, enduring echo of the violence he had orchestrated.